Good morning, everyone. Thank you, and welcome to another literacy live stream. As you know, our focus this month is legal literacy. So, our guest today is Dianne Leyva. Did I say that correct? Did I say your last name correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and she's with Leyva Law Firm in the Midland, Odessa area. And Diane's going to be discussing general legal issues related to immigration, visas, and some DACA and citizenship updates. So welcome, Diane. Thank you. I know you were a guest last year. We're happy to have you again this year.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me again.
Yes, absolutely. Well, immigration remains a very hot legal topic,
Yes.
especially in Texas. So why don't we just go ahead and start by discussing some of the updates with some visas and updates on DACA.
Updates on visas. I know that they are renewing visitor visas, and I think that most of the process is just being done, like all the paperwork, without really even having to go to an appointment. I'm not certain about new visas. As far as I know, I don't think they're giving any new visitor visas. Um, and you can fly into the country with the visitor visa, but you still can't travel through land. Um, so they're using that maybe to control like COVID a little bit more. But for the most part, if you fly into the U.S. with your visitor visa, you get your permit like normal, but they're not letting you travel by land. So the port of entries are not being used for anybody that has a visitor visa as of now.
Okay, and can you talk a little bit about the Violence Against Women's Act visa and the Victims of Crimes visa?
Yes. So the Violence Against Women Act is to help women that are married to U.S. citizens or legal permanent residents to obtain status in the U.S. without having to have their spouse petition them. And I'm sorry, this is for women and also for men. And so the person has to suffer hardship, both either emotionally or physically. And then we would so I'm going to give you like a hypothetical. So, for example, you came to the U.S. on a visitor visa and you married a citizen, and that person has become abusive, both physically and emotionally, and they try to control you with your lack of immigration status, right? So maybe they told you, yes, I'll make sure to do the paperwork, and then once you were married, they were like, no, because they use it as a way to control the person. So there, a lot of times you have threats like, I'm gonna take the kids, I'm gonna call ICE on you, you're gonna get deported, you're never gonna see the children again. And a lot of the times, especially after a violent altercation, it's always like, if you call the cops, you're the one that's gonna get into trouble because you don't have status, and you're the one that's gonna get deported. So don't call the cops, right? And so that's not true. If a victim is ever found in that kind of position, if you call the cops and you file a police report, that's great evidence so that you can file, your VAWA. If in this hypothetical, if you entered with a visa and you're married to a U.S. citizen, you can get your green card relatively, quickly, because of that, because the person is a U.S. citizen and you entered, with government's permission with your visa. So you do have options. You don't have to stay in a home where you're unsafe because of your lack of immigration status. If you are a permanent resident, the process does take a little bit longer, but with your VAWA, you're protected from getting deported. We try to do it a lot for, usually there's a history of violence. It just doesn't happen just one time. And then when they're going to go file for divorce, we make sure to have filed the VAWA before, so that there's no fear that you file for divorce and then your spouse calls ICE on you, kind of to just try and get rid of you. And so once you have your VAWA, you have your receipt with you. If they do call ICE, and then ICE does get involved, you have your receipt that you've already submitted this application, and they tend to leave you alone. It's very, very common for it to happen where, well, you're the one that's going to get deported, and so women are really scared, or men are really scared, and they don't want to file anything. But I think it's very important that you know that you'll be okay if you do.
Okay. And so that's Violence Against the Women's Act and the Victims of Crimes. The Victims of Crimes visa is a little bit different. So, want to talk about that one?
That one is also, you can, if you're a victim of a crime anywhere in the United States, there is a specific list of crimes, and they're pretty, intense. It's like, if maybe a relative, like a very close relative, was murdered, like a, spouse, a parent, or a child, um, or rape charges, sexual assault, um, you know, robbery, or very intense crimes. If you're a victim of one of those crimes, then you can file for a U visa. The U visa requires that you help the investigator, that you are available to testify, and so once that's completed, then the investigator, the cop, they'll write. We have to have this like exact form filled in, and it has to have their signature. It's called the supplement. And once we have that, then we know that we can proceed with filing for a U visa. So the purpose or behind this U visa is so that people that were victims of crime would come forward and report them, because the same thing. If they don't have status, they're scared, and they don't want any problems. They already had a problem, and they don't want any more problems. But the U visa is just for that, so that if you're a victim of crime, so that you can report it, and so that you're not afraid that you're going to get deported. And so
Okay.
law enforcement, especially in Odessa, they're very, very helpful. They kind of will tell you about it before you even see an attorney. So I've had a couple of people come to the office that were victims of crimes, and the cops are like, "Hey, you need to seek an attorney. Maybe this could help you." And so it's really Odessa has been very helpful with that.
Okay. And so, that's Violence Against Women's Act visa and the Victims of Crimes Act visa. So those are two separate visas. And so the Violence Against Women is to protect non-citizens from being abused based on their immigration status. And then the Victims of Crime is so that a victim of a crime, like you mentioned, those intense type of crimes, will cooperate with law enforcement in reporting or testifying against them, correct?
Yes, and for the U
Okay.
visa, domestic violence is also on there. So if you're married to someone that's not a citizen, so if you
Okay.
don't have status, and your spouse also does not have status, you can still file for U visa under the domestic violence. So
Okay.
that's also in there.
Okay, perfect. Now let's talk a little bit about DACA. It doesn't seem like it's back. That's what we know. It's back, right?
Yeah. So if I think the last time we talked, they weren't accepting any initial applications. It was just renewals. And so now we can do initial applications. The requirements, you had to have been here before 2007, continuously in the United States. And so it's more work now because, it's 2021. And so we have to show that the person was here from before the 2007 date up to today. But, if they're in school, you send in your school records, your immunization records. So we haven't really had a lot of requests for evidence once we submit a packet, which is really what we were expecting, just because it's so many years.
Okay. So it's kind of functioning similar to the way it was before.
Yeah. There's really nothing added to how it was before. Really hoping for something, but as usual, just kind of up in the air.
Okay. And so DACA recipient or DACA can also apply for legal residency and citizenship, correct? Or is there a path for that?
No. So if you
Okay.
have DACA doesn't let you apply for a green card or citizenship in and of itself.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so you do have situations where someone has had DACA, for a while, and they happen to marry a U.S. citizen, and they happen to, have entered legally. Then in that case, they can apply for the green card, but it's completely separate from their DACA.
Okay.
And that event, what DACA is beneficial is, if the person is employed, then in the time of sponsorship, they can use their income. or they've had DACA, so they have really pretty good record with immigration already, to where it shows that they are not, they don't have crimes and kind of there's like a little record there already.
Okay.
That's helpful, but it's not like, oh, I have DACA and I can get a green card through DACA, which is what we want. Really, that's really what we want. That they can go from DACA to a green card without, having to get married or, just it on their own.
Okay, so there's a different process to go that they have to take. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about visas. People don't know that there is 185 types of visas that people can apply for, so it's very overwhelming. Some of our students, they say, I have this visa. I'm like, can I do this? Can I do that? I'm like, well, I have to research that visa because there's 185 types of visas out there, and each of them have their own rules and processes that people have to go through that have to if you have this particular kind of visa, you can only do these type of things, kind of thing. So you want to just talk briefly about they're kind of divided into two types of visas, if I'm correct. Immigrant and non-immigrant. So the immigrants are permanent and the non-immigrant visas are temporary. So those are the two types of visas that are among those 185, correct?
Yeah, so an immigrant visa is your typical green card, but it's not really permanent. I hate that they use that in the word legal permanent resident because it's not actually permanent. You'll have to renew. If you get a 2-year one, you'll have to remove conditions after the 1.5 years. And that's if you marry someone if you get married to somebody and that marriage is less than 2 years, you will receive a conditional green card. And at the 1.5 year mark, you'll have to submit documentation to show that you are still married to that person. It's about 90 days the window that you have to submit that documentation, and then the remove conditions, and you'll get your green card. If you don't do that, they can basically revoke that conditional green card, and put you in deportation proceedings, which is what we've seen with a lot of people that just either forget or they get a divorce. And so if you're not with that person, you do have other options, but it's very, very important that you do, see an attorney to explain to you what your options are.
Okay, so that's important that, because a lot of people think that because they have, they call it the green card or permanent card, that they're like, oh, we're good. We're good for the rest of our stay here in the United States. But remember, that is not permanent. It's temporary, and you have to renew it every, I guess, I don't know how many years, every few years, I'm guessing.
The conditional one is to remove conditions, that they'll give you the 10-year card. So when you have your 10-year card, after 6 months before that 10-year mark, you have to keep renewing it. Do encourage people to apply for citizenship. It'll save you the hassle, and then you're a citizen, and you're not in a position where you could get deported, right? And so if you get your green card through marriage to a U.S. citizen, you can apply for your citizenship at the 3-year mark. You just have to prove that you're still married. Or if you got your green card through a family member or even through your job, then you can apply for citizenship at the 5-year mark.
Okay. Now, but there are certain visas, work visas. There's H-1B, H-1B3, H-1B, et cetera, different type of visas that work visas in particular. There are certain stipulations within those visas that, if your spouse came here on a work visa, your significant other can't work, or they're only here for a certain amount of time. So are those is if a spouse came to the United States on a particular type of work visa, can that spouse and can that person that has the work visa and their spouse apply for a legal for a green card or not?
So it just depends on what kind of visa they have. H-1Bs, so every time somebody applies for a green card, they have to be petitioned, right?
Okay.
And so it's not really like, well, I have this type of visa, so I can apply myself. It has to be someone has to petition the government for you.
Okay.
And so if you have like an H-1B, then your employer can apply for your green card for you. And then like if it's a family, they would basically like go in there with, let's say, mom is an engineer and she has an H-1B. And so spouse and the kids would be able to get their green card if the employer petitions.
But the employer has to petition.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Not because I already have an H-1B doesn't mean that I can apply for a green card on my own. So, and I think that's kind of where, especially when you have like a work visa, it's, you're dependent on your employer.
Okay. And then there's also other types of visas called tourist visas, which make up about a majority of the type of visas. Unfortunately, in those, they can cover you for 6 months, for 5 to 10 year period, etc. There's different rules on different tourist visas. But if you come to the United States on a tourist visa, you still have to be petitioned in order to get to apply for a permanent green card, correct?
Yes. So I think maybe the majority of the work that I do is someone that entered in with a tourist visa and then they overstayed. And so your tourist visa will be for 10 years. But when you come to the U.S., they give you like a little permit, or now it's online, but it's called an I-94. And then that little permit grants you a status, or not status, but it allows you to be in the United States for 6 months.
Okay.
Sometimes they, and I don't know with COVID, but we've seen a lot where they've given up for like shorter periods of time. But those let's say you come in and then you're supposed to just be coming to visit, right? You can't come to work or anything like that. So you can visit. And then before your 6 months are up, then you go home and you return it, or you notify that you've exited the country. And so, some people have them for years. They just come visit and they leave and so forth. And then sometimes, you get here and there's like a change in circumstance. Maybe your fiance or your boyfriend or girlfriend proposes and you end up staying. And then at that point, that's when you apply for your green card. But it's because you're married and your spouse petitioned you.
Okay. You still have to get petitioned. And I know that unfortunately tourist visas are misused a lot of times. I don't know the way to put it, but they are misused. And so if you overstay with your tourist visa, can that affect your path to a green card or citizenship?
Oh, definitely. So if you overstay more than 6 months, this is like the trick. So if you overstay more than 6 months and you leave the country, you pick up a 3-year bar, and so they'll probably revoke your visa. They'll give you they'll give you a bar, and then they won't let you come back in. If you're here and you overstay for a year, so after your permit has expired 6 months, you stay like an additional year, and you leave the country, at that point you're picking up a 10-year bar. And so the next time that you try to come in, if the government knows that you overstayed, then they'll revoke your visa and they'll give you like a bar. Those can be overcome with waivers, but again, you're dependent on a family petition, right? So and waivers, I feel like, let me know if I'm, confusing you. But so waivers you can only get through spouses or parents. So even if you have a child that's a U.S. citizen, they won't do a waiver for them or through them.
Okay.
The thing there though is if you enter with the visa and you marry a U.S. citizen and you overstay, even if it's 20 years, if you never leave the United States, if you're here those 20 years, then whenever you're married and you're going to apply for your green card, you don't need a waiver for that. So the trigger doesn't actually happen until you leave the United States.
Okay. So if you come in here with a tourist visa, you overstay, and you're not married, you'll have to get a waiver or something. Otherwise, you'll get a bar, as you say.
Yes. So you come in tourist visa, and let's say you're not using it correctly, and you're just coming and you're working and you're staying 6 months, you overstay 6 months, you pick up a 3-year bar, and you overstay 1 year, you pick up a 10-year bar. And those can only be overcome with the, through the spouse or the parent, citizens or residents.
Okay. And let's talk a little bit briefly about student visas, because those are also available. If you come here to study, there's a lot of those type of visas too, because there's, visas if you're going to come and study to be a medical doctor, if you're going to come and study engineering, if you're going to come and study this or this or this or that. So those are only for a short period as well. And unfortunately, sometimes people get in trouble with those as well, because they overstay their student visas with that as well. So I'm assuming that it probably works the same. You're going to have to get a waiver if you do overstay, or if you leave the country and then come back in.
Yes, and so I personally don't handle student visas. For the most part, they are handled by the school. Like the school have like a specific attorney that handles those for them. But yes, so the overstay is pretty much even. It's across the board for if
any
you're
type of visa.
If you're out of status and you. So going back to DACA on that one, we have people that have had DACA since they were 16, right? So they've had it consistently. They renew on time, so they're not like accumulating that 6-month period. And so if they enter the U.S. without any status or without inspection, and they have to go to, let's say, Juarez for their interview, if they've had DACA consistently, they might not need a waiver just because they've been in status that whole period after they're 18 years old. And so that's the one thing with the overstay and the waivers and the bars is if you are under 18, the 3-year bar and the 10-year bar don't apply. If you entered with inspection and you leave, they're not going to apply to you, right? For the overstay, they only apply after age 18. But the scary bar, it's called 212A9C, the permanent bar, they don't care how old you were. So if your parents bring you that inspection when you were 1 and you overstayed 4 years, and then you came back without inspection and you triggered a permanent bar, the government doesn't care that you had no control. So that one is in my personal belief, very harsh to have a permanent bar on someone that had no control, right?
Mm-hmm. So immigration and visas is they're very confusing. So if you have questions about your immigration status or your legal status or your visa status, it's very, very important to seek legal counsel. And so seek legal counsel from experts like Dianne. Or let's talk a little bit about seeking legal counsel, because there's a lot of scammers out there, immigration attorneys that are scammers. So talk a little bit about the importance of seeking out, professional, proper legal counsel in the immigration world specifically.
We have a lot of people in immigration with notarios. Notarios are not attorneys, right? It's basically a notary. They can stamp something and say that you are who you say you are. And that is, for some reason, very, very common in the immigration world. And so we have notaries that tell people that they're attorneys when they're not. I think
do your research before. Yeah.
Like a little Google, like you just Google the person. Maybe if you have somebody that's already gone with them, if you know that for sure they are an attorney. So in Texas, you can do State Bar of Texas, and you can put in the attorney's name or the person's name to make sure. Because I had some clients from New Mexico, and they're like, yeah, this guy's for sure an attorney. And I was like, okay, well, let me just make sure, right? So when you're an immigration attorney, you file what's called a G-28. You print out on blue paper, and that's like your notice of appearance, right? That you're representing this person. And so this person brought me the file, and I was like, there is no G-28. Like prepare it, like it's empty. Like all these forms look like you did them yourself. Like whoever did them for you did not put their name right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked him up and non-existent, right? And she was like, but he said he was an attorney. And so it's terrible, right? You know, you go to an attorney because you think they're going to help you, but one, you're not really sure if they're an attorney or not. And two, people are liars. So just make sure that, I think the little Google search will save you a pretty big headache.
Yeah, you can just do your due diligence, and I know with nonprofits there is a GuideStar program that you can research, the status of a nonprofit. I'm sure there's something similar for attorneys. Like you mentioned, we'll put on the comments the link that you said to search for attorneys in Texas.
So, State Bar of Texas, it'll tell you the attorney, where they practice, what their practice areas are, if they're bilingual, what languages they speak, and then it'll have like a little green dot or a red dot, and it'll tell you if they've ever been in any kind of trouble. So,
okay, perfect.
I mean, that's really like the most simple way that I can like tell you to look someone up. I think Google reviews. I know a lot of my clients actually come from Facebook. A lot of people like on the trading post, like Edgewood County trading posts, they'll ask like, hey, do you have someone, do you an attorney that speaks Spanish or, has helped you before? And so my clients actually come from there. So people, they try to help, right? And they'll be like, okay, this person, stole my money, or, that's kind of helpful.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's great information. And in the comments after the live stream, we're going to put Dianne's law firm information and your contact information as well, if you would like to seek counsel from Dianne and her law firm as well. And if she can help you, I'm sure that she can refer you to an attorney's office that can. Dianne, these conversations are always so helpful, especially for our students. And I know it can get confusing, and so it's so important that we get this information out to our viewers and our students, so that they know their rights and they know how to navigate the immigration process, because it can get very confusing even for American born citizens. Are like, I don't know, there's 185 visas, I don't know what type of visa you're on. So make sure if you're not sure about anything, seek legal counsel. And I know that many attorneys in the Midland, Odessa area and in Texas will do free consultations, and they can help you from there or guide you in the right direction. Any last thoughts, Dianne? And I know you mentioned the importance of getting your citizenship, is getting becoming a citizen if you're a legal permanent resident. And I just wanted to talk a little bit, in the few minutes that we have, just about the importance of becoming a citizen and becoming, a legal resident in the United States.
So if you already have your green card and you have been a resident for more than 3 years, you're married to a U.S. citizen, you can apply for citizenship. If you've had your residency for 5 years, you can apply for citizenship regardless of if you're still married to that person or not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very, very important. The exam, depending on where you're at. So let's say you, I don't know, 25 years old, you've had your green card for 5 years. You'll have to do the English portion of the exam, which is honestly pretty basic. It's just conversation English with the officer. When you get there, they'll say, hi, how are you? And so they're kind of watching your English there. And then there's like a phrase that you have to read, but it'll be like Abraham Lincoln was president type of deal. And then you have to write a portion out too. But they tell you exactly what words they're going to ask you. So you can there are a lot of resources out there for you to study. Some of my clients even download an app, and they do like the little, because there's 100 questions. They're going to ask you 10, and you have to get 6 right. And so there's a little app, and they'll practice like their questions on there. For older people, if you're 50 years old, and you have been a resident for 20 years, you can skip the English portion, and you can do it in your native language. And if you're 55 and 15, that exception applies to you as well. If you are 65 and older and you've been a resident for 20 years, then you only have to do 20 questions. You only have to learn 20 questions, and they'll ask you 6 from there too. So
Perfect.
I don't feel like it's difficult. Maybe, yeah, it'll take, you'll have to study, right? But we handle the whole application portion of it, make sure the person knows what they're saying yes or no to. And then the actual, I'm just like, okay, I do all this for you, and then you just have to study. So we've been pretty successful. Sometimes, emergencies happen in families, and I've had a client or two have to go back and because they give you 2 chances. But yeah, everyone's done pretty well. It's been good.
And a little promo for PBALC, we do offer citizenship classes, and I know there's other literacy centers across Middle Odessa and the Permian Basin that offer citizenship classes. So no excuse not to pass that test and not get your citizenship. Well, Dianne, thank you so much. It was wonderful, and we'll hope to have you again as our guest next year. Okay. And like I mentioned, we're going to put your information in the comments below if you want to reach out to Dianne and get her counsel. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.